I'm Richard Hara, your host, and this is Social Impact Live. And I just saw Atlanta.
Finally,
Okay.
I don't know who it is, but I love
Okay.
that.
Obviously, our guest today does hail from Atlanta, and we'll get a little bit more of your background. But I just want to note or welcome you, Allana John Charles, to our program today. As I said before, you hail from Atlanta, Georgia, are now here at the Columbia School of Social Work as a foundation year student, and also a first-year coordinator of the Black Caucus. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And, I always start the program, first of all, reminding our viewers that even though we reserve the last 10 minutes for a formal kind of Q&A, if you've got any questions, if anything comes to mind during the course of the program, and you can always just put them into the chat box, and hopefully sooner rather than later, we can just weave them into the conversation as we go along. So just wanted to remind the viewers of that. And of course, we'll be talking about our main topic today, which is what Black History Month means today in this I want to say day and age, but after all the momentous events of the past year, where are we with Black History Month? Where did we come from? And more importantly, where do we go from here? What are our next steps? So that's the main topic. But before we get to that, I just wanted to ask you, Allana, if you could just give our viewers a little bit of background. I mean, how you got into social work, how you came to come to our school in particular.
Yeah.
What was that journey for you?
Well, I was born and raised in Columbus, Georgia. It's about 3 hours south of Atlanta. And then I moved to Atlanta for high school and college. I went to undergrad at Kennesaw State University and got my Bachelor of Science in Human Services, which was very interdisciplinary. It was like social work and sociology and a lot of like nonprofit administration type of work. But I knew that I wanted to be a counselor. I swore that I wanted to be a counselor since I was about 15 years old. And so when I was looking at graduate school, I kind of didn't know if I was going to go right away or if I was going to take some time off and work in the field. I was always working in the field throughout undergrad, kind of paying my way through school. So I had a lot of experience and I didn't really know which route to go. But then I came across Columbia School of Social Work and I really just fell in love with the program. I loved that there was a lot of focus on international social work and what that looks like and not just kind of domestic local work. I really liked the prop curriculum and the focus on social justice. And I love that it was in New York City because I've always wanted to live in New York since I was younger. So I applied and I got in, and that was kind of what brought me to CSSW. And now I'm actually on the policy practice track with a focus in contemporary social issues.
Last week we had a discussion of policy, and there were a lot of people who were interested in the audience to hear more about policy, and obviously it was one of your major interests coming here to the School of Social Work. But it seems like you had a background and an interest in service in general. Before coming to social work. So is there something about social work that you see as kind of different about the work that you had done previously and that you're looking for in your future training?
Yeah, I think what it was for me is social work in general and the framework of social work going into the policy field kind of works from a place of serving the most marginalized populations. I think sometimes policy can be so up here and not actually attainable to people, or doesn't actually cater to people who it, most likely could be harming. And so I knew that I wanted to switch into more of the policy realm, but I wanted to do it from a social work lens just because advocacy and always keeping in mind, power and race and oppression and privilege in these policymaking environments was something that was super important to me as a person. And yeah, as a clinical type of social worker previously, I was always, I was working with homeless families and in the healthcare system. And I realized that a lot of the work I was doing, while it was so meaningful to me and to the people I was working with, it also sometimes it felt like I was a Band-Aid fix for more structural issues. So that's kind of what prompted me to go into policy, keeping that experience, but realizing I wanted to help come up with solutions for these issues.
Mm-hmm. So, not going beyond, but sort of starting with that generalist perspective and looking at how, the different levels, the micro, the mezzo, and the macro all sort of have to be taken together in some kind of systemic whole, and now particularly interested in the policy and advocacy side of things, and I think it's also worth noting that before you came to the School of Social Work, that you also had seen this program. Is that correct?
Yes, I remember last December, January, early February. I used to watch these every week, and I used to think, wow, the people on there are so smart and I'm learning so much. Like, it was kind of one of those things. And so, yeah, I was talking to my dad earlier and I was like, now I'm talking on it and getting this opportunity. And that's just a great moment.
Well, yeah, it's certainly coming full circle here, and we're beyond pleased, but privileged to have you here today as a guest on the program. So thank you so much for joining us. So I can see, obviously with an interesting policy and so on, and it sort of leads us into our main topic today, and thinking about Black History Month and what it is and how it came to be as a sort of function of policy, right? And in a way, and in response to a perceived need. So, I mean, what's your take? I mean, the creation of the of a Black History Month. What was it meant to accomplish?
um, I think Black History Month is kind of one of those ways to amplify Black voices, since historically, and especially in education, Black voices, Black history, Black abolitionists and leaders are so often kind of written out of history. So it kind of, in my opinion, was created to counteract kind of that white supremacy culture of that only topics in history that the majority deems appropriate are included in our history books and are part of the main conversation. And so to me, it's kind of counteracting that and saying, if you're not going to give us every month of the year in real equitable, inclusion in education, then we're going to make our month and we are going to make it about us and amplify Black voices and Black talent and Black history.
Yeah, and I wanted to do a little background research, and I found out that really the whole idea started way back in 1926 with an African-American historian named Carter G. Woodson, and sort of grew and evolved over time until 1976, when it formally was instituted as a Black History Month. So, I mean, thinking about the history of Black History Month, and I think what you were saying before about it, sort of why are we only talking about Black history in February, right? The shortest month of the year, and from my understanding, it was. February was chosen not because it's the shortest month of the year, but because it was an opportunity to celebrate together the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, right? So, which is an interesting commentary on the politics, right, of getting something like this done. So yeah. So have we marginalized Black history in another way by doing just this month, or I don't know. I mean, people have expressed that opinion. People have said that, well, it shouldn't be Black History Month. It's because Black history is American history and so on. So So, there have been reservations voiced about the whole notion of Black History Month. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those gray areas. I see where people are coming from with wanting to amplify Black voices, but I feel like once again, things like that can almost be a Band-Aid fix for these problems that are much deeper than we like to perceive them as. So to me, I would love to see the conversation go from, obviously we celebrate Black History Month and we always should, but what about our curriculums in school? What about educational access for people who live in marginalized communities? It's kind of one of those things where oftentimes in American history, we have done more surface level gestures. For example, painting Breonna Taylor on the street, but not giving her and her family real justice, or not changing the policies that allow for these things to happen in the first place. So for me, I love Black History Month and it's a great time to celebrate my culture, but I would love to see us move towards really rewriting these curriculums and accurately telling history the way it happened. There are so many things that now, as an adult, I've had to relearn about my own history that were completely taught to me in the wrong ways, K through 12. So that's what I would love to see as actual tangible, policy steps to help incorporate Black history into the educational system more from foundationally from when we're children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree 100% with you that it needs to go way beyond a simple recitation, right, of names and dates and so on, as if that's going to correct what is happening in elementary level education and so on. You mentioned something that, just now about sort of having to correct what was taught to you. Can you give me a little bit of an example of something that was taught to you and then you had to sort of relearn from a whole different perspective?
Practically everything. I think a lot about this, not even just with Black history, but even with, Christopher Columbus and colonization and the ways that that was taught. I remember specifically being taught that from a very kind of disgustingly positive point of view. And now I look back and I was like, that was so violent, and the trauma that was caused towards Indigenous populations. And I was taught it like it was a good, great thing. I mean, a whole holiday and celebration in school. So it's like so many things like that are things that I've had to now as an adult and being in higher education teach myself all over again. Even with Black history, with MLK and the ways that his message has often been kind of whitewashed. And I've had to reteach myself, what he actually stood for. And towards the end of his life, before he was assassinated, talking about economic mobility and reparations and, tangible policy, economic progress for Black Americans, not just social equality. So I think a lot of these things are kind of concepts that I've had to relearn as an adult, and that I shouldn't have had to, because there are a lot of people who are just believing this information in the ways that things were taught, and then going out and the ways that they interact with people who identify differently as them or look differently as them, or in politics, that's the framework that they're operating from because that's all they've been taught. So it's like, how can we structurally change this and make it more inclusive for everybody? And if we had better education, we could all be a lot more understanding of each other and our backgrounds.
Yeah, no, what I hear you saying is, I mean, certainly, we need some basic facts, right? And to know the truth about our history through the lens of different groups, identities, and so on. But at the same time, I guess the perniciousness, right, of systemic racism is just how it just creates these sort of blind spots, right? These silences and gaps in what we're taught and what we think we know and understand about history and contemporary society, right, for that matter, and sort of trying to sort of switch or move the narrative towards something that is more structural in nature, right? That kind of conversation and so on. And I think this maybe addresses one of the questions that we've gotten here from the audience. How do you feel Black History Month helps to dismantle anti-Black racism and oppression? Is it effective, you think, or and if so, in what way? If we're thinking about a more systemic point of view.
Yeah, it's a gray area. I think that it does help to dismantle oppression in the sense that education is liberation. The more we know, the better we do. So while it might not be the most structural solution to this problem, it also does play an important role in the fact that I have so many friends and colleagues who just through Black History Month and our prop course at CSSW have kind of opened their eyes to what Black history really means, or Black history in the present context of everything we're going through today. And it's helped them to become more well-rounded. It's even helped me, I'm constantly learning as well. So I think that it can help to dismantle anti-Black racism in the sense that the more we know, the better we treat one another, the more we understand each other's backgrounds, and the more we can advocate better as professionals and people. It's not the most structural fix, but it also still is important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so just again thinking about the current moment, right, and the events of the past year, and thinking about the impact of the Black Lives Matter movement, and where we are in terms of addressing white supremacy and systemic racism in American society. Just trying to, sort of extract this from everything else that's going on politically in this country related to the election and things like that. All of that aside, right? I mean, what do you feel like we need to do to move forward? I mean, I'm not saying we should abandon Black History Month, but it feels like this is a moment, right? That something about this has to change, and maybe talking about Black History Month is just that opportunity, right? To sort of take that next step. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about that, Allana?
Oof, pretty loaded question, but
Yeah.
um, I'm someone who I feel like everything we're seeing today and so much of the oppression that Black and Brown individuals face is rooted in a lack of economic mobility, discriminatory housing policies, mass incarceration, the war on drugs. So to me, it's important to simultaneously teach this history, but also we need better policies. All of this whole, uprising and advocacy is because our education is not being taught. We're not being treated equitably. We're facing so many pandemics at once. And so, yeah, I think it kind of needs to be this all-encompassing approach of we need to help Black and Brown Americans economically, we need to help them socially, and we need to dismantle these systems that historically have always oppressed them, with the prison system, with the criminalization of drugs and sex work, and a lot of other things that harm our communities.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking, I mean, sort of thinking about laying out that whole agenda, and then trying to sort of focus in on specific areas like jobs and the economy, and so on. And of course, I mean, one of the biggest issues that we've got now is healthcare, right? And racial inequities. And I know that you were working as a nurse last year. Did any of those experiences kind of inform your understanding about where we are in terms of these issues, and has it changed? I mean, I feel like there's definitely more acknowledgement in the mainstream media about racial disparities and inequities of care. Certainly related to COVID and so on. So I was just, is this an area that we can maybe sort of get some traction on this?
Yeah, definitely. I think my experience as a nurse, I was telling you earlier before we came on, but I was just working a couple days a week, working my way through school while working in social work as well. And then I ended up going full time. And I think that that was probably the most impactful experience I've ever had as far as how I view policy and social justice and everything, mainly because I was working in a very small, very safe, long-term care facility for people with cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, etc. And all of my patients were white. I didn't have one Black patient, and it was because it was so expensive. It's long-term care for older individuals is so expensive, and especially since our place was a lot smaller and had really high quality care, only people of a certain economic status could afford the care. And so it made me feel this kind of crazy disparity where, like, cognitive dissonance, where I'm taking care of this certain group of people. Meanwhile, people who actually look like me and belong to the communities I belong to are disproportionately dying of this illness. So that was something that really stood out to me and informed my views of policy, of just how deep healthcare inequity runs and how it permeates from mental health services to end of life care to actual, medical bills and everything else. And I think we have made some headway in this conversation of, medical inequity and everything. There's been a lot of conversation around birthing and the disparity within that. But I still feel like we do have a long, long way to go. And I'm very passionate about everybody having access to healthcare and quality care, because our health is such a huge part of who we are, and our physical health determines our mental health and vice versa. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And I hope this isn't too personal a question for you, but we've got a question from the audience, and yeah, reaching out to you, Allana, directly by name. As traumatic of a year last year was for marginalized communities, there's clearly so much work to do. How have you personally found the strength to keep your focus on the hard work and not the ignorance overt racial traumas that are on clear display in so many places? If you're okay with that question and willing to just share a little bit, you know.
that's a great question. I think for me personally, it's been finding community. I think that that's something that I didn't necessarily have before, and now I moved to New York, and I've actually made a lot of friends who are also my colleagues in the field of social work, passionate about social justice. I'm a part of the Black Caucus. We have meetings practically every week. So I constantly have this kind of safe space and bubble to kind of vent about the frustrations or discuss areas where I'm kind of having confusion. And I know it's a safe space because these are people who have the same lens and want to help the same communities I do. I also think it's just, I do have hope, as hard as this past year has been and how tumultuous and traumatizing. And sometimes I've had to take a break and take care of myself. Like, I'm a social worker, but I can't save the entire world and country from itself. So I've had to take care of myself and then just lean into the beautiful community I now have of social workers and advocates and friends who are all passionate about that. And I think especially to have a long-term career in this field, it's like it's a marathon. Like, you've got to pace yourself and you've got to have people who you can rely on to vent about these heavy topics we discuss in class, and these clients who sometimes are just going through the worst situations. At my field placement, I'm working with asylum seekers, and their whole situation has been turned upside down with COVID and everything else. So I think with all the heaviness of the profession, you just really have to lean into whatever community you've been able to build for yourself and kind of have those people designated who you can rely on and lean on, and also have people who can give you hope when you're feeling like the world is a very hopeless and tumultuous place. And I definitely have those people in my life, so that's helped a lot.
Yeah, and maybe before we wrap things up, you can tell us a little bit about the Black Caucus and its role within the larger CSSW community as you see it, right? And maybe again, what sort of changes do you think you can advocate for within our school, right? Our level of education that might address these issues that we've been talking about?
Yeah, so I joined the Black Caucus last summer. Before I was even really a student at CSSW, I knew that I wanted to have that community because everything that was going on, I'm like, I'm going to need some Black students to just have this camaraderie with. And it's been a really wonderful experience. The second year co-presidents, they're wonderful, and they've really been a great inspiration to me. They've given me kind of tools and tips on how to navigate this whole CSSW situation and now CSSW remotely. So that's been wonderful, and we've been able to put on a lot of great events. We did an event on mass incarceration and how it was going to affect the Black vote before the November election, and how important it was to mobilize the Black vote. We had this event in October, and that's really what happened when we look at states like Georgia, mobilizing the Black vote. And so we have events like that. We have check-ins where we all just kind of come together and talk about what's going on for a couple hours. We all just kind of sit on Zoom and, have our tea and just kind of decompress everything that's going on. And we've been able to also advocate for a lot of different issues within CSSW, partnering with other caucuses whose values kind of align with us, and doing kind of collaborations with them. And we do a lot of exciting things. We plan a POC graduation, which is specifically for students of color who are graduating, just to give them that extra pat on the back. Like, despite everything against you, you are graduating with a master's degree from Columbia University. So we do a lot of amazing things like that. And we actually have an event tomorrow. We have an event next Wednesday and the Wednesday after that. So we're having an event every week of Black History Month, and they're open to the public. So would love for anybody watching to come participate and see what the caucus is like. And you also learn a lot too.
All right. Well, thank you, Allana John Charles, our guest today on Social Impact Live. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
I think that we'll be able to maybe post some links to, Black Caucus events and any other materials that you'd like to share, certainly with regard to Black History Month with our audience. So, so people can look forward to that as well. So, Allana, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
I think that wraps up our show for today. Just want to give a plug for our show next week. We'll have Yamile Marti here to talk about her development of a course to prepare students for professional practice that also incorporates a anti-racism component. So looking forward to that conversation. And again, thank you all for joining us here at Social Impact Live. Take care. See you next week. Bye-bye now.